You tweet a lot.
I use my tweets to express myself. Some people use their hair. I use Twitter.
Well, but you use your tweeting to kind of get back at critics.
Rarely.
You kind of have little wars with the press.
Twitter is a war zone. If somebody's going to jump in the war zone, it's like, okay, you're in the arena. Let's go.
What can I say? I agree with Elon Musk on this one. Twitter is the arena. You jump in and you are going to war. All right, that's what Twitter is. That's the public square of the modern era. That is exactly what the public square is for.
Good morning, everyone. It is still morning. How is everyone doing? It feels good to be back in the basement, in the studio with, let's see if the camera seems to be asymmetrical. And I've got my mic. Everyone, checking that this is the mic that's picking up the beautiful noise. I believe it should be good like this. Good morning, inmates. Yeah, let me Mark Simpson, truth in jest. Let me tell you this much. So what's the good word? I missed 2 days of streaming and video making, and I feel it's not the Tom McDonald song, it's but the lack of attention left me feeling worse than before. It's not the lack of attention. It's the lack of a feeling of productivity. I don't like feeling unproductive. I don't like not being productive. And I appreciate, there's other things in the world that can be measures of productivity other than content creation and talking about stories that you find interesting. But that's how you realize what you love when you love doing it. Yeah, there's a part of me at this point, I used to say I'd rather be fishing. I'm not so sure that's true anymore. I think I'd almost rather be creating content, covering stories, analyzing stories that I find interesting. Yeah, the hair yesterday it was perfect. Greasy hair, weighs itself down, the curls, it forms these nice, beautiful curls. And hold on. I did miss everybody here. I missed doing this. I missed interacting. I missed discussing. I washed my hair last night. So now it's like, and I tried to settle it down with my kid's detangler, but that didn't do anything. Yeah, people. So for those of you who are on the locals community, you would know based on 2 pictures of me having caught fish. One was a Mayan cichlid or a Mayan chichiled. I forget which. I never caught one before. And the other one was a nice smallmouth bass because I flew down to Florida on a short notice. It wasn't pleasure. It wasn't business. And it wasn't a funeral. So those are the 3 things that it wasn't. It was something that couldn't drive down in time. And flew out of Canada and was in Florida and saw, a world of difference is an understatement. There was once upon a time a theory. People were hypothesizing that one of the reasons for which the Canadian government makes it so excessively difficult to travel. So excessively difficult to travel, not just in terms of departing, but in terms of returning to your own country as a citizen of your own country. One of the reasons why they made it so utterly impossible, unpleasant, dehumanizing is to deter people from escaping Canada, even if only temporarily, to see that the rest of the world is functional. Certain states are open states, and they haven't turned into the pandemic apocalypse that everyone imagined they might turn into, that everyone warned that they might turn into. When Texas was going maskless last year, it was apocalyptic. If they take their masks off 2 weeks later, everyone's going to be, collapsing in the streets. By the way, I did notice this. Ricada, Scott Adams, Crowder, Viva, all live. I do apologize. I wouldn't try to go at the 10 o'clock slot ordinarily, but I have lunch with a fellow lawyer colleague, former colleague, at 12:30. And we've got a live stream tonight with Pedro Gonzalez, which is going to be amazing. So ordinarily, I would not compete with my brethren on the YouTubes, but I don't think anyone claims to have monopolies over time slots. But yeah, it's a busy morning. I saw Ricardo's live. I believe Alita, Legal Bites, is covering the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. I know Crowder's live. I know Scott Adams is live. So there was people theorized that one of the reasons why the government made it so unpleasant, so costly to travel. I'd say costly as in added charges, which for some are going to be inconveniences, for others are going to be prohibitive, is so that people don't actually travel abroad and see what the rest of the world is doing now. I landed in Florida. First of all, humans like to think that we're the smartest animals on earth. I am now thoroughly convinced we're not the smartest animals on earth. We just think we're the smartest animals on earth, and we're actually exceedingly stupid. And I will explain that in a bit. Good morning, Viva. Loved your visit on Adam Krigler's channel. A good discussion with two good people. Your comments on Canada reminds me of China. Master Malaribius, thank you very much. And I'm going to be getting there. Talking about the return to my own country, where I'm a citizen, where I, in theory, have charter rights, constitutional rights, in theory. Standard disclaimers, though. YouTube takes 30% of super chats. If you don't like that, we are simultaneously streaming on Rumble. Rumble has these things called Rumble Rants. They take 20% at Rumble, so you can feel better supporting a platform and making sure that the content creator gets more of that support. And alternatively, you can support Robert Barnes and I if you want to. You're so inclined on Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. You don't have to be a paying supporter to get tons of content on Locals that you don't get anywhere else. Oh yeah, and Zot is in Ireland. He's been live streaming. There's no shortage of stuff to watch, and you can always catch this stuff after the stream. So meandering. Theories that the government made it exceedingly difficult, exceedingly costly, exceedingly impossible and unpleasant, especially to travel with kids, so that Canadians don't see what's going on outside of Canada, so that Quebecers don't see what's going on outside of their province. I was biking last week. I went for a bike ride, first bike ride of the season, and I'm biking on the street. I guess I'm panting because I'm going up a hill, and I'm huffing and puffing, and I see an elderly lady. Her husband crosses the street, I guess, to try to get away from me. He wasn't wearing a mask. And then this elderly lady, I see her, and my impression may be wrong. I might have, not seen what I thought I've seen, or there might have been another reason for what I think I saw. But I see this elderly lady frantically searching her pockets. We're outside. I'm on the street. I'm not on the sidewalk. Frantically searching for a mask that she frantically pulls apart, and she couldn't get the ear loops around her ears in time when I passed her. She just pinned the entire thing over her face for the nanosecond where I passed her on the street outdoors. And I thought, this is not a question of mask shaming, period. It's not. This is a question of witnessing firsthand trauma. Psychological, emotional trauma that comes from psychological and emotional abuse. This, unless I misread it, and I don't think I did, and even if I did on this occasion, I've had other experiences where a jogger on the street passed me, a healthy, young jogger, put a mask over their face while they jogged past me and then pulled it down after they passed me. It's trauma. It is the lingering effects of years of incessant psychological abuse, to the point where the mere presence crossing paths of humans who probably in Canada, 90+% fully vaccinated, last I checked, 90%, give or take, probably fully vaccinated, probably also got the Rona, as I did back over the holidays, frantically, like they needed that security blanket on their face. It is the results of years of psychological abuse. And when I see something like that, I think to myself, François Legault, Justin Trudeau, your ad dollars for COVID awareness are well spent. You've reprogrammed, you've rehardwired people's brains. I travel to Florida. You land there. It's the way it should be. People want to wear a mask, they can. If you don't, you don't. Speaking of the absurdity of the human condition, flying down, the airline warnings. I've only flown twice in the last, in COVID, but in the last 4 years, maybe. The rules that they impose: keep your mask up at all time. When you sip pull it down to sip, but then pull it back up. Pull it back up in between sips, in between bites. They give you the warning on the airplane. In the event of a loss of cabin pressure, you might notice the oxygen masks will come down. Remove your face mask and put on the oxygen mask. Thanks. If there's a loss of pressure and I'm struggling to breathe, I needed you to give me the authorization to pull down my COVID mask, my cloth mask in some cases. The one that the airline gave me, because I didn't have one, was a cloth mask, just like a shirt. I needed them to remind me in case of a catastrophic, midair issue, in case of an emergency landing, and you need to use the oxygen, take off your mask before putting on the oxygen mask. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. But we are humans. We find solutions to problems that don't exist. We create problems so that we can then find solutions, so that we can implement rules that make us smart to follow. This is the human condition. We are so I've said it before, but we're so craving drama. We're so craving problems to solve that we will literally take an image, break it into 100 or 1,000 little pieces that fit together only in certain ways, so that we can spend an afternoon reassembling an image that we broke apart into 1,000 different pieces strictly so we could reassemble it. I'm talking about puzzles, people. This is the human condition. We need problems to solve. And if we don't have those problems, we will make those problems so that we can find solutions, so that we can create idiotic rules and implement them like robots, thinking that it makes us smart as a species. And then coming back to my own country, coming back as a citizen of my own country, the government implemented this thing called the ArriveCan app, which I didn't have on my phone and didn't know I needed, and didn't know I needed a QR code like a piece of cattle to cross a border to come back into my own country. You download this app from the government. The same government, people, that I've talked about this repeatedly, the same government that now admits that it was using propaganda on the citizens. It saw COVID as a good opportunity to test propaganda on the citizens. If you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not even going to let you think that I'm exaggerating. There was a report that came out, and if you're not new to this channel, you'll know it. COVID propaganda military Canada. Military leaders saw the pandemic as a good opportunity to test. Watch this. The government is now telling you to download an app. The same government that the military of which, close this. Oh, I got an Ottawa citizen. There you go. The same government whose military leaders saw a pandemic as a unique opportunity to test propaganda techniques on Canadians, Forces report says. A plan devised by the Canadian Joint Operations Command relied on propaganda techniques similar to those employed during the Afghanistan war. Sorry. Those were, I think the one in the Afghanistan war were not tested on Canadian citizens. Those were implemented on Afghani citizens. Now they've decided COVID's a good opportunity to test propaganda on citizens. That's our own Canadian government. Now they're telling you, download this app, by the way, and wait until I get to the questions that it asked. But hold on. It's not just that they did that. Canada tracked data. I think it was 33 million devices. Canada Public Health Agency. This is National Post, people. Just in case you thought I'm making this stuff up, or, I've gone full AJ. Alex Jones. Censors be damned. Canada Public Health Agency admits it tracked 33 million mobile devices during lockdown. The Public Health Agency of Canada accessed data such as cell tower locations to monitor people's activity during lockdown. But hold on one second. Let me just see the part where, just Google the word safety. Is it in here? Security? Hey, here we go. No, it said it was for our security. You don't need to see that. You can go look these articles up yourselves, just so you know that I'm not making stuff up, and that I'm not misremembering, and that I'm not that I'm a reliable individual, not as a journalist, but as a news source. So the government that now admits it was using propaganda on you during the pandemic, it was tracking your movements surreptitiously by accessing cell tower data to track your movement during the pandemic. They're now compelling, and I'm not even recommending, compelling you to download the ArriveCan app so that you can get back into your own country of origin, your own country of citizenship. And what is it? They're now compelling you to download the ArriveCan app so that you can answer a series of questions which would be invasive, intrusive questions if it were your girlfriend before you decide to have intercourse for the first time. Sorry about the analogy. Or your partner. These questions are not even questions you would ask on a date. And you're required to answer them. And you're required to answer them accurately. And they have written records of your answers. The questions were, you're coming back to your country. If you're over 5, by the way, the ArriveCan app question said if you're over 5, you need to be fully vaccinated to come back in unless you have an exemption. My understanding was that children under 18 for international travel and for return did not have to be vaccinated. There's the unconstitutional draconian measure of in Canada to travel within your own country by bus, maybe it's not by bus, by train or plane. You're 12 and over, you need to show proof of vaccination to travel within your own country. Mobility rights in the charter be damned. Fine. That's a fight that you can have internally within your country for an unlawful or unconstitutional diktat mandate. This is to get back into your own country. The government is saying you need to have certain requirements to get back into your own country. And if you don't, you need to show proof. Have you been infected with COVID in the last 180 days? Oh, if you answered yes to that, can you provide the documentation? Not if you rapid tested at home like you asked us to. Provide the documentation. And if you can't, then they asked you, and these are the questions. I might be misremembering some of them. Do you have a quarantine plan where you can be isolated for 14 days or more? And I believe that or more question was in respect of people who are not vaccinated, which includes children who may not be vaccinated for a number of reasons. Do you have a quarantine isolation plan for 14 days or more if you're not vaccinated? Because at this point, not being vaccinated, you're subject to different rules for isolation because of science, or just absolute punitive measures to tell parents who have decided not to get their children vaccinated, welcome to hell, because your children, if you don't get the vaccine, you can come back to your country of origin. You can come back to your country of citizenship, but your kids might have to isolate for 14 days or more if they test positive upon return based on one of these spot checks with one of these tests, which if you've had COVID recently, might test positive, a false positive for any number of reasons. So they ask you that. Do you have a place to quarantine? Do you have a place to get the essentials, the necessities of life? I mean, what if you answer no to that question? Does the government put you in one of their facilities where they will provide you the necessities of life? And then it asks you in your quarantine, will you be in a location that has vulnerable people? That's defined as people over 65. If you answer yes, what then? Back to the government facility? You can't go home with someone who's vulnerable? It is. When I came back to Canada, it literally felt like I was coming back to a prison where, I got through fine, but a prison where, random spot check, random test, and the government owns you. The government owns your kids indefinitely, virtually. They own what you can do with your kids, and if you don't do what the government says, they can physically own your body unilaterally, arbitrarily, indefinitely. And some people are like, well, it's COVID. You have to. It's a big, risky thing. It's a pandemic. And then if you had gone to Florida, if you had gone to Texas, if you had gone to parts of Europe, if you had gone to parts of the world where none of this is going on, you would see what an absolute tyrannical, it has to do with safety only in its justification. It doesn't have to do with safety in its efficiency or its effectiveness, because if you look what happened in the states, and a report just came out that compared the performance of various states, and which ones do you think performed the worst? You can go after the study. It might be a partisan study. You can go after statistics because they can be used to prove anything. 85% of people know that. They did a comparison between the states, and lo and behold, which states performed better than others? Florida performed better than New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And even if you want to go out and say, no, they didn't, they actually performed worse, they were 5% worse. You want to look at the short-term comparison. Okay, fine. Maybe I'll even operate on the basis that Florida and Texas performed slightly worse than Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York. Okay, good. Let's look at this in 2 years' time. You think this is measured only myopically at this point in time? And at what cost? At what cost did Florida perform worse than the states that locked down their citizens, shut down businesses, destroyed kids' mental well-being? And you think that doesn't have lingering effects in terms of spiking crime rates, in terms of spiking self-harm rates? No, but they did. The lockdowns were more effective marginally, in which they weren't, but even if I operate on that basis. So congratulations. What did it cost you? Well, I can tell you one thing. You won't notice it tomorrow, but you're going to notice it in the near future and in the long term. And you're going to notice it hard in the long term. You need to go to this government site. They are going to say they consulted Canadians. Oh yeah, they got their 67. They conducted a poll. But look, so even operating on the basis that Florida did marginally worse than other states that had hard lockdowns, et cetera, which they didn't, but even operating on that basis, what did it cost you? I was talking to people in Florida, not formally, but I was talking to people. Oddly enough, lots of people who moved from New York to Florida, and they're complaining about Florida. Oh, DeSantis, they think I'm Canadian, or they know I'm Canadian, so they think I don't know about American politics. And I don't even know that they know beyond the headlines that they're thinking, you better look at Ron DeSantis if you think the Florida government's any better than Canada. Ron DeSantis, don't say gay, and doesn't want to talk about these things. Like, I know a little more than that, but I'm not interested in having an argument when a cordial discussion with someone. But the irony is that people, lots of them who I talk to, moved from New York to Florida, and they say Canada's a beautiful place. And I say, yeah. Do you guys know that we were locked down in curfew for 5 months? Like, when I say it now, it's insanity. Our government locked us. This is in Quebec, not the rest of Canada, because we were super safe in Quebec. We had the hardest measures, and we probably performed the worst of any of the provinces. Why? Because we knew where the deaths were occurring, and locking down healthy young people doesn't prevent the deaths in long-term healthcare facilities. But I tell people in Florida, do you guys think Canada's beautiful and you think it's great? And do you know that we were locked in our houses for 5 months? 5 months. From 8 at night or 9 at night, and after daylight savings time, thanks to Supreme Leader, I think it was extended to 10, until 5 or 6 in the morning. I forget what it was. 5 months. Oh, I didn't know that. That sounds pretty excessive. Yeah, no, it doesn't sound pretty excessive. It's absurd. And it wasn't just once. They did it again the next year. Didn't last 5 months. I guess we should be happy. We should be grateful to our abusive partner that, the punishment didn't last 5 months this time. It only lasted 1 month or a month and a half. I forget what. But Canada's pretty good. Yeah, if you love that, if you think that's better than a little wild freedom in Florida, a governor whose policies you may disagree with, well, try 5 months of a lockdown during seasons that are already depressing to begin with. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. Winter. Imagine being locked in your house for 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day during the season in which there's already a high, what they call seasonal affected depression disorder, SAD. 5 months. And that doesn't include not celebrating isolation from friends and family for the holidays. That doesn't include the vaccine passport where 13-year-old unvaccinated kids were turned off soccer fields because they couldn't compete because they didn't show their vax pass. That doesn't include the face masks day in and day out. Well, I'll get to the subject matter in a bit, but funny, so I'm talking to my youngest kid, and he says, why, we moved schools because one school wanted to be harder than the government. One school wanted to mask kindergartners all day long. It's the government says it, even if they don't say it. We'll be what is it? Holier than the Pope, more kosher than the rabbi. We're going to be stricter than the government. That's how good a citizen we are. That's what people think makes you a good citizen, is to be stricter, more, I'm going to say unscientific. Just be stricter than the government. It makes you a more virtuous citizen. So I took the kid, we switched schools. We went to another school where, at least in kindergarten, face masks weren't required. And I'm talking to the kid. He says, why did you do that? And I said, well, that's the reason. He says, oh, they had a better playground at their school. I think he's wrong, as a matter of fact, but he's entitled to his opinion. But priorities, a child's priorities versus a parent's priorities. But I wore that mask for 6 hours, 7 hours in the airport. It feels disgusting. You know, I had am I out of focus? No. I had like a split lip because of the dryness, and it's like a festering, moist cloth on my face for 6 hours. It's not okay. I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to bring it up. I'm going to read it in my head now. Science, because they didn't recognize natural immunity, as far as I understand yet. No, and then you know the questions they ask you on that app, the ArriveCan app, imposed on you by a government that has been testing propaganda on you and spying on you. If you answer any one of those questions wrong, I'd be curious to know what happens. I mean, and some of the questions: what was your date of your first shot? What was the date of your second shot? Get it wrong? Hey, technically it's a wrong answer on a government document. I have no doubt they can use that to weaponize it for political purposes if they were so inclined, but they would never do that. I mean, a government that tests propaganda on you and that spies on you would never weaponize excessive, unjustifiable rules, regulations, mandates for political purposes. You'd have to be a theorist to think that. I don't know about the grizzly bears. Grizzly bears, that would only be in British Columbia. Why are there still COVID restrictions? Isn't it over? Most news channels seem to infer that the war in Ukraine. No, but it's and in certain places it is over. But do you think a corrupt government, which is the Justin Trudeau, which has had one ethics breach after another, one scandal after another, is ever going to want to let it down, to drop this so we can actually go back to scrutinizing the government? If you think that, I've got a bridge to sell you. I don't actually have a bridge. Well, I do. Sorry, that's the whole point of it. The survey is on hate. It's unbelievable. Oh, the ideologically motivated violent extremism is now the big thing in Canada. They got to shut down discussion. They got to shut down websites. The questions. So, and the questions, like all these questions, answer one wrong. And what are the fines? What are the fines that can be imposed for answering incorrectly, even in good faith, any one of those rules? Because good faith is only subjective to the person who wants to impute it or deny it. And that is how things get weaponized. And by the way, the travel restrictions in Canada, why hasn't the federal government rescinded the vaccine passport for plane and train travel? I can tell you my theory right now, my operating theory, there's a there's a leadership race for the leadership of the Conservative Party, a federal party. There's a, what is it called? It's an election battle for the leadership of the Conservative Party, which is a federal party, which means that those running for the leadership of the Conservative Party have to travel across country. They have to go see their constituents from Victoria, British Columbia, which is the easternmost point, the westernmost point of Canada. Actually, I believe it's Port Alberni. If I'm not mistaken, someone in there correct me. Port Alberni, I believe, is the westernmost point of continental Canada. The candidates who are running, they have to go from Port Alberni to Cape Spear, which is the easternmost point of continental Canada off of Newfoundland. Well, how are they going to do that if they can't fly? How's their team going to do that if they can't fly? Well, that would seem to limit the type of conservative candidate that can effectively run for the conservative leadership. What about how amazing is that? Justin Trudeau, through his federal vaccine mandate policy, can effectively interfere with, frustrate, limit, compromise the individual candidate for ideological reasons who might be running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I'm sure it's an accident. I'm sure it's just a convenient accident for not rescinding measures that, as far as I understand, have been rescinded pretty much everywhere. But it's amazing. Limit the conservatives who can effectively run for the leadership of the Conservative Party. You can effectively influence which leader has the best chance of getting elected for the conservative leadership. It's scary that any conservative political gathering is now viewed as dangerous to a majority of the country. We need to keep our heads on straight. It's too late for many, John Francis. Well, that was one heck of an intro rant, people. But it's not I'd say it's not an accident. The government that has tested propaganda on you, that has spied on you, that has lied to you day in and day out, that has 2 ethics breaches confirmed. Dropped my lip still. 2 confirmed ethics breaches. 1 got off by the skin of his teeth. Multiple corruption scandals. They're implementing a vaccine passport restriction that is being challenged by Brian Peckford, who I interviewed a couple weeks ago. It is being challenged by Maxime Bernier, who I'm actually going to be on a show with Maxime sooner than later, and he's going to come on my channel sooner than later as well. But they're maintaining this unconstitutional travel restriction. Who's it going to affect? It's odd. There's a conservative leadership race currently underway now. Certainly would seem to have an indirect impact on who can effectively run for leadership of the Conservative Party. What else was there? Anyhow, that's it. So that's for Canada. But let's just do one other news story coming out of Quebec, which is this guy, the Duhaime, who's running for the Liberal. Let me see. I forget which. We're having elections in Quebec as well. For those who don't know, I think it's November 2022, which is provincial leadership. Hold on one second. In USA, we are compelled by law to answer the American Community Survey, intrusive questions like your income, gas usage, etc., as, quote, part of the census, end quote. No, and yeah, they'll only use that information for good. They will never use that information against the individuals. And you'd have to be a theorist. I'm just going to start calling it a conspiracy realist. That's it. Done. Conspiracy realists. So there's an election coming up in Quebec, November 2022. The CAQ, La Coalition Avenir de Québec, Supreme Leader François Legault, who has abused the citizens for over 2 years now, and to compensate them for their physical, psychological, financial harm, for the inflation that's resulting because of the government measures. He throws out a little $500 check to everybody who's making less than $100,000 a year. The insult to injury. It's like, what movie was it where they it's like stuffing $1 bill or 20 in the mouth of the person you just beat up so they can, go get Band-Aids and disinfectant. So there's an election going on. Now, Duhaime, I think, it's the Conservative Party. So there's going to be a challenge to François Legault. I had the good mind to just buy a massive billboard and just say Supreme Leader François Legault. Don't vote. I don't care who you vote for. Just know and remember. Don't forget, we were in curfew for 5 months, and we're supposed to believe that this is a free country. Duhaime, who's the leader of he's running for the Conservative Party, asks Quebec government to cancel all infraction tickets related to COVID-19 health measures. By the way, I talked about this a lot back in the day. The amount of tickets that were given out, it resulted in infractions in the order of tens of millions of dollars. Now, the Eric Duhaime Conservative Party is calling for the cancellation of all infraction tickets related to health measures, according to the Conservative leader. The Legault government has been unnecessarily repressive. Oh, thanks. Things I could have told you 2 years ago. Things you should have been vocal about. I'll say I was late to the game. At the very least, when I came around and when I said, maybe this is unconstitutional, maybe this is unscientific, maybe there's a way to actually protect the vulnerable without punishing the healthy. But yeah, I guess better late than never. In election season, when Eric Duhaime now thinks maybe now this is popular enough to publicly stand by, whereas I don't know where he was when it wasn't. A report released, listen to this, 2 weeks ago showed 46,000 tickets, whatever, and change, issued between September 2020 and October 2021. We think it would be important for the government, in a gesture of unity, to abolish these 46,000 tickets of $1,500. Someone do the math real quick, real quick. Let me just go see what that translates to. I'm sorry, my math is not that good. I just divided it, and I'm not that stupid. Hold on, 46,000 times 1,500. That's $69 million. Last time I checked, it was 35 million. So good for the government. You issued $70 million of fines. Well, I guess the $150 million of COVID ads isn't going to pay for itself. The government has put in place measures that were unjustified, and today these people find themselves paying fines because they violated a law that was unjustified at the base, which was never recommended, he argued. Okay. We don't need to go further into the article here. I'll clip it if anybody wants to read it. They want to cancel the tickets now. I mean, people in the chat got the you got the amount. I know if my father's watching now, he's thinking I failed at math, but it's not a question of having failed. It would take me 30 seconds of thought, but I don't want to say 69,000. It wouldn't be 69,000. They want to cancel the tickets now. Set aside, they should never have been issued in the first place. They were repressive. They were arguably, I'll say, discriminatory, based on. I have friends who, who work places. I don't cite them as anonymous sources, but they were arguably discriminatory in terms of who they targeted as who they targeted for these violations and how they went about determining that people were not social distancing, how they were not member of the same bubble, and cancel the tickets now. What does that have? What does that do for the people who already paid them? The funny thing is that in France, the consult firm McKinsey, which contributed to the okay, I don't understand what that says, but I'm sure someone out there is going to understand. Cancel all tickets worldwide. Now, so they want to cancel the tickets as an act of unity. You imagine? I mean, I know people have already paid. I mean, even Pat King was ordered to pay his ticket, although I'm not sure that was. I forget what his ticket was COVID related. I think it was a COVID violation, public gathering type thing, restriction. Anyhow, but I know people who've paid already. I know people who've contested, and they contested without success. Quick maths. Can't do it. I can't do it. I get too nervous. Quick maths. We need more taxes. So, now they want to cancel the tickets as an act of unity. And then maybe François Legault, elections coming up, maybe he'll do it. But my saddest revelation, I think people want this. I think people in Canada have been so isolated, have been so indoctrinated with irrational fear. They want this because, like that old lady that I crossed on the street, she felt safer by mashing some mask against her face as I passed her outdoors en passant, like a pawn in chess. And I've had discussions with people who are intelligent, who said, well, it's possible if you sneeze while crossing paths with someone and it's a particulate sneeze and they happen to inhale vigorously at the exact same time. Smart people living in absolute irrational fear, because that's what happens after an excessive period of time in fear. There's nothing wrong with making decisions in fear or coming to conclusions in fear, but you have to be aware of the fact that you are in fear, and therefore perhaps the conclusion that you've come to is tainted and affected by the fear in which you were operating when that decision was made. So anyways, that's the latest. Éric Duhaime, if you're looking for an alternative to Supreme Leader François Legault, hey, at the very least now, he wants to recommend that François Legault cancel the tickets as an act of unity because the measures were repressive. That's not enough, Duhaime. First of all, if you are welcome on my channel any day of the week. I have nothing against you whatsoever. I'm just going to be critical where I think critique is warranted. It's a good start, but that's not enough. This, someone, when I was talking to the people down in Florida, they're like, well, they're easing up the restrictions now. They're loosening up now. I was like, do you know what that's like? That's like someone saying, it's been a good week. I have not been abused this week. Well, they didn't abuse me this week. So I should be thankful, as though they don't think they can do it whenever they want at a whim. And all they have to say is, for your safety, and we bypass the legislative process. No, it's like the dog analogy. Once a dog has bitten you, it's not because a dog goes a week without biting you that it doesn't mean you're living in the same house as a dangerous dog that is prone to biting, especially when they think they can get away with it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long that dog goes without biting you. If a dog has done it, has gotten conditioned to being able to do it, and will do it again at a whim, you are living with a dangerous dog in the house. And coming back to Canada, oh, well, at least they're easing up now. No, there has to be a change in leadership, and there have to be sanctions, or at the very least, assurances that this will never happen again. This is not something that can ever happen again. You don't lock down 8.5 million people because you have 1,500 people in hospital. You don't do that. And any group, any politician that ever did that should be ousted from office. They should be voted out of office. And there should be policy enacted to shame whichever politician ever did that so that it never happens again. This is not a question of, oh, thank you, sir. No push-ups this morning. So, Eric Duhaime, if you're listening, first of all, come on the channel. We'll talk. It'll be fun. You'll get some reach in the province. I think I have expanded my Canadian reach proportionately to what it was 3 months ago, but it's not enough. This can never happen again. These have to be declared unconstitutional diktats by the courts. They have to get there, and they cannot be dismissed for mootness because the measures are no longer in effect. It can never happen again. Teapot dictators cannot be empowered to think that they can lock down a population without a legislative process, without evidence, without public discussion and debate, and get away with it because they stopped doing it. Okay. My eye is itchy. I'm not crying. Well, that was one subject. But look, do we, while we're on the subject of Canada garbage, there was, if you're in the locals community, you would have seen these already. All of them. I tend to post a lot more for the members at large. Robert does a lot of exclusive stuff because Robert's brain is an encyclopedia. Robert Barnes, that is. I wanted to, where was it? What I was going to pull up here. That was not it. 2 stories. Oh no, I already got to the one. That's why. The other one was just a totally random thing that came up in discussion. Hold on. I just saw something in the chat there. Viva, can I make your speech into a video? Please. You can even, this is not carte blanche to clip and monetize at large. Anybody clipping 100% is not fair use, but clip and monetize it. Feel free. This article just came up in discussion, and it's one of those things where until they said it, I would never have thought anything of it. until the Trudeau subsidized, bailed out media said it, I never would have had the thought. But that's because I'm an innocent, naive boob, and I don't even learn from my own traumatic government experiences. If you just Google this story, I'll clip this here for everybody. You can go ahead and read this. There were rumorings. There's a lot of rumorings about Trudeau, and I hear a lot of the rumorings. I even get private messages, which, if I were a BBC type irresponsible journalist, I might report those stories and say, well, someone told it to me. And I actually have good reason to think that some of it might be legitimate, but that's not me. If I can't actually verify it, I'm not going to spread rumors. Spreading rumors is like tearing open a feather pillow and splashing those feathers everywhere and then trying to stuff them back in. But there are a lot of rumors about Justin Trudeau. I just actually prefer the stuff that's verifiable. Stick to the ethics breaches. The rumor stuff, very interesting. But this. I'm going to go to the website. It will shock you. Woke agenda. And this is from J Mill. Oh, I love that fish. Social media has stripped way too many people of the reflex to become self-aware. Listen to this article. Never would have thought anything of it, but now I do. Trudeau BC civil court case from 1999 was over a, quote, fender bender. Liberal campaign. This is an old story. It's an old article. It's from 2019. But it just came up in discussion. I thought it was worthy of sharing and worthy of looking at. Justin Trudeau was involved in a minor vehicle collision that ended up in British Columbia civil court through the insurance process, according to records still listed in the provincial judicial justice database. The thing is, you don't actually see much from that other than the parties, because you'll see now the records were destroyed, as court records are within 12 years of the suit. Someone probably kept the lawsuit, but who knows what it was about. I would have ordinarily thought innocent fender bender, until, the bought-off media comes in and says, nothing to see here, it was a fender bender. Liberal campaign spokeswoman Zita Astravas says it was a fender bender that happened in 1999 and that was dealt with through the BC's public auto insurance regime. I don't know why an individual would be named as a defendant, personally, if it were being dealt with through the auto insurance regime. Screenshots of the records began circulating on social media earlier this week, with people speculating about why Trudeau was named as the defendant in a civil case before the BC Supreme Court. British Columbia, just to get everyone, don't get confused, but the BC Supreme Court is actually the court of first instance. Then you get to the appeals court, and then you get to the Supreme Court of Canada. In Quebec, it's called the Cour de Quebec, Court of Quebec, or the Superior Court, not the Supreme. But the Canadian press verified the existence of the records in the database, but the actual documents are no longer available because the courts only retained them for 12 years. The Canadian press was unable to locate the person named on the file as plaintiff. Interesting. Yet, we've concluded there's nothing to see here. BC has a public auto insurance program, and someone who is not satisfied with the results of their claim, can dispute it through the courts, which in a small number of cases includes a trial. That doesn't explain why they would name a personal defendant in the suit. That, in my mind, I'm not a British Columbia lawyer. I am certified in Quebec and only federal law, not BC law. But when they say it's a public insurance program, and if you're not happy, you can go to court, in my mind, in my understanding, that would involve the insurance parties, not the individual defendant. That's why they're insured. And that's why in Canada, we don't have the type of ambulance chasing, car accident stuff that you have in the States. Funniest thing in the world, as I'm driving in Florida, like every other billboard, one of them, good advertising, 1-800-411-PAIN. Slip and fall, car accident, we can get you paid. But we have no fault insurance in Canada, which is why we wanted to avoid that type of excessive litigation. So even if they were unhappy with the outcome and they took it to the court, I don't know why. Maybe someone who knows British Columbia law could explain why that could ever include the defendant personally. Maybe it's different in British Columbia. And yeah, so that was just a fun story, which I was like, okay, didn't think anything of it until they said, don't think anything of it. Because typically, if there's nothing there, you don't write an article on nothing there. Let me see here. Every day, send to all your dear elected leader. I read in Viva Frei YouTube Live to send you the peaceful demand. Peaceful. Well, you could say, okay, don't say I read it in Viva YouTube Live, because then they're going to think I said people should do this. I say one thing and one thing only, which I will repeat: peaceful protest and peaceful protest only. If you disagree with me, I respectfully disagree with you. Peaceful protest only, for the very reason that the government wants the excuse. I mean, the problem is they'll fabricate the excuse even when it's not given to them, but peaceful protest only, as far as I understand, of Mahatma Gandhi, it's the way to go. I haven't heard any stories I haven't heard any stories that would cause me to question the heroism of Mahatma Gandhi. There's the old expression, never meet your heroes, but I haven't heard anything that would cause me to undermine my belief that Mahatma Gandhi had it right. It didn't end well. The question would be, would the impact have been, would his impact on the world have been different and lesser had he resorted to the means that he said not to resort to? Truth needs no defense, and the only cure for bad speech is more speech. Since you speak French, I suggest you watch Fabrice Divisio, a lawyer in France. He has a lot to say about the influence of the strategy consultant firms. These days, he targets most of McKinsey. I have no doubt. Politics is run by think tanks. And by the way, the trust the science governments in Quebec, it became widely known and widely indisputed that they were running on polls. They were making policy decisions which they cloaked in trust the science based on polling. That was the criticism of the government. It wasn't scientific. It was actually cloaked in science, determined by polling. You know what that makes it? Political, not science. Or as some like to say, political science. Trust the political science. You can never go wrong when you trust the political science and analyze accordingly. So that's the funny Justin Trudeau story, which I am sure there are sleuths out there who could find the court records, or who could find the plaintiff, or who could find the insurance company. But there's no doubt the insurance company would have destroyed those documents as soon as they're legally allowed. And I think it's 7 years in Quebec. I may be wrong. So that's it. But let's, hey, while we're on the topic of irresponsible or responsible journalism, sorry, force of habit. I cracked my knuckles again. Let me just read some of the chat. Corruption is, it's par for the course. Corruption is so disgusting and destructive, little time, and it's par for the course. It's so par for the course now that people will justify their own corruption as good politics. I'm trying to think of a prime example where what would otherwise have been pure corruption is now just good politics. Donald Trump, when he colludes with the Russians or colludes with Russian entities, it's an impeachable offense. When he allegedly, because the evidence was that he didn't, It's an impeachable offense. When the Hillary Clinton campaign, mandates foreign firms to produce phony reports, set aside how they were used for corrupt purposes in the States with the FISA courts. When they go pay foreign firms to dig up dirt, it's opposition research. One person's corruptible, impeachable offense is another person's legitimate political opposition research. Watch of the Watcher by Dr. Barris Artis. Viva, please get him on your show. I don't know if you mean it's in the water, folks, literally or not. Alupa Kalula. But thank you. I'll have a look. I don't know who that is. So this is not an endorsement. Yeah, but it's the corruption is it's people have normalized the corruption when it's on their side of the tribal warfare. I will not normalize corruption regardless of the side. Trudeau would be a co-defendant. The insurance company is ICBC, the Insurance Corporation of BC. Yes, but why would he be a co-defendant if the insurance company, if he assumes his defense, or if the insurance company is subrogated in his rights for defense? Why would he be named as a defendant if the insurance company is there specifically to assume the defense of the insured? I'm asking, and I don't know. I'm not casting aspersions. Yeah, I'm pro-Trump. I mean, I don't know if that's a sarcasm or not, because I'll be critical of Trump as much as I'll be critical of everybody, as I have been when relevant. I'm not, okay, whatever. But what was I going to say? Oh, speaking of responsible journalism. Speaking of responsible journalism, and then we're going to get into this decision from a federal court judge. I read it. I read a tweet of it. It was only a screen grab. So I was like, okay, do not rely on screen grabs, people. Don't do it. How do you find the information within a screen grab? Well, the easiest way, 101, Google search, or whatever, Google and DuckDuckGo are equally corrupt in their search results, but you can still get accurate search results if just take a clip from the article, put it in scare quotes, and you will pull up the original, in theory, if it exists online. I saw a tweet, which was, no, that's not the one I want to get to. I want to get to son of a bee sting. Was it this one? No, that was the intro. You know what? Hold on. I'm going to go share. I'm going to get to the original tweet, which I read it. And I was like, no, this it can't be real it can't be real for obvious reasons, because what was stated as a fact of judicial notice, which is the judge declaring a fact for which evidence could not have been made before the court, that's called taking judicial notice of certain facts. So like the sky is up would be a fact of judicial notice that a judge could take even if evidence were not adduced to that. The birth date of Abraham Lincoln, you wouldn't have to submit evidence. It's judicial notice. The judge knows that. But when I saw what this judge was seemingly taking as judicial notice, this is coming from a tweet to give full credit to everyone involved. Mike Eckel, who is time-honored scoundrel, former Nigeria with Snow correspondent. I don't know what that means. Opponent of quiet desperation, contains multitudes. I don't know what that means either. Illegitimi non cobrandum. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry, people. I don't speak Latin, but I'm going to actually. We're going to find out what that means before the end of the stream. So he tweeted, just noticing this little Easter egg. I don't get the expression, but I think I know what it means. That was hidden at the end of the U.S. judge ruling last week, ordering the seizure of Vekselberg's yacht. Vekselberg, who is now, I didn't know who he was. Viktor Vekselberg is a Russian oligarch. I don't know how that term is being used these days. Seems like it's being used relatively freely to label anybody that you want to label part of a regime so you can slap sanctions on them. Just call them an oligarch and they are de facto, legit objects of sanctions, whatever. And this is what the paragraph reads. If the U.S. government allows Russian oligarchs to evade sanctions without any consequences, they will continue to, quote, enable Putin's war against Ukraine, end quote. U.S. Department of Treasury available at, citing an article. This judge, and I don't know if this was submitted as evidence, but this is an article that the judge is citing as an authority for seemingly, but I still thought this was a joke when I read it because of what's highlighted. Far from being grossly disproportionate to Putin's murder of civilians, destruction of Ukrainian cities, and attack on Ukrainian sovereignty, forfeiture of the target property is wholly justified. I, reading this, didn't know what the target property was, but I mean, I had a rough idea because I thought I heard about it. The seizure of the target property is just the beginning of the reckoning that awaits those who would facilitate Putin's atrocities. Neither the Department of Justice nor history will be kind to the oligarchs who chose the wrong side. This is not a pleading, people. This is the judgment. But this is the part. The Department of Justice's seizure echoes the message of the brave Ukrainian soldiers of Snake Island. And they cite a CNN article from March 13. Okay. So I read that, and because I knew how the Snake Island story ended. And I said, okay, if this judge is citing it, surely it was sarcastic, ironic, or surely this is just a fabricated post, because it's not possible. For those of you who don't know about Snake Island, it was one of the stories, like the Ghost of Kiev, like a number of other stories, which turned out to be somewhat inaccurate, in that the alleged story was at first Russia troops annihilated those 13 soldiers, as they said, big F you, a big F you to the government, to Russia and Putin, as they were destroyed by the government. And they ran with that story. And then it turned out, this was Zelensky who said it publicly. And then it turned out they weren't, and they were alive. And then people were like, you know, don't spoil the narrative. People need inspiration. So that it turned out that the story was bunk. You know, set aside intentions. The story that was initially circulated was, if not entirely wrong, materially wrong. And I knew that. So I was like, this judge is citing it. Surely it has to be in the inverted. And just, you know, by way of example, this is outrageous. I'm sorry, if that was from March 15 and they knew as of February 28th, CNN, okay, enough said, as we say in the industry. BBC, and this is screen grabs from BBC article. You can go look for it yourself until they take it off the interwebs. I didn't include a link here. BBC News, Snake Island, Ukraine says soldiers killed after refusing to surrender. 25 February 2022. BBC, Snake Island, Ukraine says troops who swore at Russian warship are alive. 3 days later. No correction, no erratum, no nothing. Like it never happened. Straight out of George Orwell's 1984, mid-sentence, the exact opposite becomes true, and they just change script. They don't so much as bat an eye, blink, apologize, formally correct, just like that. Like it never happened. So I'm saying that this judgment cannot be real. It can't be a real judgment. But lo and behold, it's a real judgment, and we're going to go through it because unbelievable is a word that has no meaning anymore. It's unbelievable. Sometimes there is no other word. But actually, you know, before we get in there, Viktor Vekselberg. Who is Viktor Vekselberg? Yes, people, I'm citing Wikipedia, knowing that it is grossly inaccurate when it comes to certain things, and qualifying, you know, Viktor Vekselberg might be one of those things. But you can still determine facts beyond the spin, which you know they're going to have. But Viktor Vekselberg, for those of you who don't know, Ukrainian-born, 1957, he's a Ukrainian-born Russian Cypriot, oligarch, billionaire, and businessman. He is the owner and president of Renova Group, a Russian conglomerate, according to Forbes, as of November 2021. His fortune is estimated at $9.3 billion, making him the 262nd richest person in the world. Okay. I don't even know who that would allure to be worth $9 billion. Vekselberg is close to the Kremlin, overseeing projects to modernize the Russian economy. Okay. This is according to Wikipedia, who is probably going to want to have a vested interest, to be particularly harsh, to frame Vekselberg in a way that might explain a seizure of his yacht in the United States by a federal court, or the authorization of. In 2018, the United States imposed sanctions on him and 23 other Russian nationals in relation to Russia's annexation of Crimea. This is in 2018, officially freezing up to $2 billion in assets. On March 22nd, following Russia's invasion against Ukraine, the United States strengthened its sanctions, and the UK, EU, and Australia also placed sanctions on Vekselberg, thereby seizing his assets and imposing a travel ban. Okay, fine. We don't think we need the early life. So that's who Vekselberg is. What do I need to go? I need to go back to StreamYard. And useful as well in the exercise of getting a complete story on this is just seeing how the MSM is reporting on it. So let's just, by way of example, let's go to the Peacock company. It's NBC. Yeah, here we go. Okay, this is a decent one. Just this is the homework that people have to do in order to come to their own conclusions. You can read all of this and come to a total opposite conclusion, that that decision from the federal court judge that we're going to get to, totally justified, totally lawful, and totally well reasoned. But at the very least, this is the homework, people need to do. Okay, U.S. authorities accuse. Bear in mind, this is an accusation. There's been no determination by the court other than accusation based on, I guess, him being a billionaire and closely related to Putin. I mean, U.S. authorities accuse Russian oligarch Viktor Vekselberg of bank fraud, money laundering, and his yacht is seized. U.S. authorities accuse Russian oligarch Vekselberg of conspiring to commit bank fraud and money laundering as his super yacht was seized in Spain. A new warrant to seize the massive vessel, signed by the representative from the FBI, gives a glimpse into the allegations against Vekselberg. The FBI believes Vekselberg used these tactics to obscure his ownership of the yacht, which is worth $90 million. Born in the Ukraine, we got all of this stuff, money laundering, yada, yada. The most recent sanctions come after the Russia invaded Ukraine. Yeah, okay, we got that. Tango is over 250 feet long and is believed to be worth $90 million. The Justice Department said Vekselberg was among a group of oligarchs sanctioned in 2018. We got all this. Here we go. A new warrant to seize the yacht, signed by a representative of the FBI, gives a glimpse into allegations that Vekselberg conspired to commit bank fraud and money laundering. The Bureau accused Vekselberg of using these tactics to obscure his ownership in Tango. He has yet to be officially charged with the crime. And they talk about the methods of obscuring ownership, where they talk about a shell company. Yeah, the warrant alleges that Vekselberg caused payments for the Tango to be run through various shell companies in order to prevent U.S. financial institutions from accurately executing their know your client, know your customer controls in order to avoid the filing of SAR's suspicious activity report related to. So you read this. The accusation is that Vekselberg used shell companies to make payments on a yacht, which presumably is not in his personal name. There could be a number of entirely legitimate business reasons for that. It's a question of protecting assets. People oftentimes will put assets in a company name to shield it from personal liability. So it's interesting. I mean, you can read this and you can come to conclusions that this is shell game fraud, so that Vekselberg can conceal a $90 million yacht, his ownership or indirect interest in that yacht, or companies that he has interests in, ownership of that yacht. Knowing how business works in general, you would often put an asset in the ownership of a company so that it would not be a personal asset that could be seized or executed against in the event of personal liability of Vekselberg. People often do this if they operate high-risk businesses, and they don't want to get sued personally, or if they do, they don't want assets. They don't want their personal assets to become seizable in the event of a personal condemnation against them. People often do this. It's not fraud to do it. It's legal, lawful protection of assets when done legally and lawfully. And not knowing the details, just the questions I'm asking. The FBI said the alleged scheme is tied to a web of little known companies. I mean, if they're incorporated companies, little known versus undetectable or fraudulent are very different, that have financial interest in Vekselberg's yacht. Many of the small corporations linked back to the Russian billionaire, the Bureau said, hey, people own corporate vehicles. People own cars in company names, fancy cars sometimes. I had a number of clients who owned very fancy cars in their company name, so that if they ever got personally sued, their cars would not be seized. It's like, and you claim or you pay tax on whatever personal expense you incur for that car, and the company pays whatever is legitimate corporate expense in that car. In Quebec, by the way, if everybody notices, a license plate that starts with an FL or an F, it's a company car. So those are my thoughts. I mean, just reading this analytically. The FBI alleged that the scheme began ongoing in 2011. A company called Arrinter is the yacht's owner. Okay. A company owns the yacht. The FBI said one of the company's organizational directors, Ream Management, has a sister company in Russia with an identical name that has a direct relationship to Vekselberg. Okay, so companies own a $90 million yacht, and Vekselberg is a director, has an interest, a shareholder in one of those companies. and he uses the yacht, and he probably uses it for business purposes. If I'm thinking like a businessman. Arranter's corporate directors are two Panamanian citizens. Well, this is where I get suspicious. When anyone uses offshore accounts, in general, I get suspicious. But I also get suspicious of billionaires as a rule. Arranter's corporate directors are two Panamanian citizens who are also officers of a company known as La Mesa Transport LLC, according to the warrant. The limited liability company. Why would you have a limited liability company? Because you want to have limited liability for the owners in the company. Appears to be an affiliate of other shell companies owned or controlled by Vekselberg. Shell companies, sometimes known as holding companies, are so that you can have tax. Look, it's gifts for the rich because they know how to use the system and they know how to game the system. But it's for tax reasons, it's for liability reasons, and it's to protect asset reasons. Now, if this is the new standard for seizing yachts because of affiliation to to criminal activity, this doesn't stop at billionaire oligarchs. I can predict that much because it has not even stopped there now. Oh, it's complicated. Management of structure, yada, yada. Okay, fine. In order to insulate the vessel from inquiries about payments made on its behalf. Let's just even assume that that's true. So they're going after him for tax fraud. What does that have to do with Putin's invasion of Ukraine? What does that have to do with crimes Putin may have committed in Ukraine? This guy might be using corporate shells to benefit from a $90 million yacht. Okay, tax fraud. What does that have to do with Putin's invasion of Russia? Or Putin's invasion of Ukraine, sorry. So the Canadians, what is this ad? Get out of here. So that's an MSM article. It requires a little, if you know a little bit about business, you can start asking some of the right questions because Russia's an oligarchy. I might think that I'm not sure that there's any government out there that's not some form or variation of an oligarchy, but corrupt government and legally and lawfully. So I read that article. If you piece it together, like they're effectively accusing him, maybe of tax fraud, maybe of deriving personal benefits from a corporate, corporate perks, which is tax fraud at worst. They seize that because he's a Russian oligarch, and this is part of the sanctions that they're imposing on Russia because of what Russia's doing in the Ukraine. That's where I start, I have my own questions. The Russian oligarch that allegedly gave Hunter Biden $3.5 million is one of the few that have not been sanctioned. And here, speaking of which, thank you for reminding me this. Corruption to one is just good politics to another. This Russian oligarch, by the way, in certain reports, is being accused. He attended the Trump inauguration. So some media outlets, I should say, he allegedly attended the Trump inauguration because I don't know it. This is what media reports. So the media that spent 3 years trying to draw, the Russiagate collusion hoax to reality, trying to hope springs eternal. Now they're saying Vekselberg attended Trump's inauguration, which is very, very bizarre, which must establish a connection between Trump now and what Russia and what Putin's doing in Ukraine. They're faulting this oligarch, this guy, what was his name? Vekselberg, for having attended a Trump rally, a Trump inauguration. That's corruption. That's evidence of corruption. But Hunter Biden being on the board of a Ukrainian energy company getting paid $50,000 a month, that's not corruption. Because that's just good politics. I mean, they're just, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing corrupt about getting $50,000 a month from a Ukrainian energy company. But there's something wrong with a Russian oligarch attending an inauguration. Rules for thee, rules for thee, but not for me. Rules for me, whatever, the expression. So don't ask that question, because if you ask that question, you become a Putin apologist. If Vekselberg attending Trump inauguration is indeed suspicious, cause for concern, evidence of collusion, whatever, then the VP's drug addicted. I'm not saying this to be judgmental. I'm saying this to highlight the fact that this individual has no reason to be on a board getting paid $50,000 a month, but for the fact that he's the VP's son. An individual with a lot of life problems, who has no expertise, who doesn't speak the language, and by all accounts, didn't even attend anything in Ukraine all that much, getting paid $50,000 a month to be on the board of an allegedly corrupt Ukrainian energy company, Well, if one is bad, the other one is indeed exponentially worse. Exponentially worse. I have no doubt a lot of bad people attended Trump's inauguration. A lot of people who I would not necessarily want to, go fishing with, go camping with. But if one is bad, by those standards, the other is exponentially worse. And I think one is probably irrelevant, and I still think the other one is exquisitely bad. Okay, so that's the backdrop of the judgment of what you need to know to digest this judgment. But wait until you read this judgment. Now, how do I go? I want to go like this because I want to get rid of this. Do I go like that? Click. Hey, how do I get rid of this? Like this? Whatever. We're going to have to deal with that. How do I get rid of the pages? I can't. Let me just make sure that we're smooth. Just want to highlight some sections of this because it's. Oh, you know what? Let me get some super chats first. Pro-life tip. For gaining wealth, hire a top-tier accountant and pay whatever their fee is within reason. Of course, a good accountant will put so much money back into your pocket. Well, Cassidy the Carpenter, I agree, but that's after you're making money. You need to find a way to make money, and then you got to fight tooth and nail to keep it, because the government, like I did in my math breakdown, it was Saturday or Sunday. I think it might have been Sunday. You make $100 at the end of the day. The government is finding a way to take 50 off the top. The Russian oligarch. Okay, we got that one. So this is what you need to know. Just to top left button. Someone says, hold on. Top left button. This. Oh, looky. Thank you, chat. Whoever said that. And I'm just going to go big now. Oh, then I'm going to want to scroll down. My dog is growling. What are you growling at? Must be having a bad dream. A good accountant is worth their weight in gold. And gold these days could be a worthwhile investment. Probably a little bit more reliable than the crypto, which I know nothing about and I do not endorse. Okay, so then this is the order, by the way. It's a real U.S. district for the District of Columbia order. In the matter of the seizure and search of the motor yacht Tango with International Maritime Organization number, whatever. Okay, so they go over the seizure. Oh, yeah, here we go. This is it. Found that there was probable cause to believe that the target property was subject to forfeiture under forfeiture. Is this civil or criminal forfeiture? Let me see if that's, I'm going to go very quickly and just make sure that that's civil forfeiture, which we've talked about also on this channel. Forfeiture based on accusation alone before any evidence has been adduced on the mere supposition. Civil forfeiture. Oh, is 982 criminal forfeiture, though? That's the question. 981, okay. 982 is criminal forfeiture. Okay, so it's civil or criminal forfeiture. 982 is criminal. What are we under here? Oh, it's civil and criminal. 981A is civil forfeiture. 982A is criminal forfeiture. You haven't been found guilty of anything yet. They're seizing it. By the okay, so pursuant to the Emergencies Economic Powers Act, I will now forever be weary of any act that has the word emergencies in it. President of the United States has authorized various sanctions to respond to the threats posed by the stability and sovereignty of Ukraine. Okay. The Bank Secrecy Act. Now, I'm especially nervous and suspicious of laws that use the word secrecy, but I think that's something else in this context. Requires U.S. financial institutions to take anti-money laundering measures to ensure that corresponding bank accounts established by foreign financial institutions are not used to avoid such sanction programs. Okay. So they impose sanctions. You got to know your client to ensure that these institutions are not being used. Sorry, I should get rid of that chat. Imagine seizing. I don't even know. I presume Bezos has a yacht. Let me just go to my notes so that I don't. Give me 1 second. Just going to go to my notes. I circled it, and it's not going to be all that easy to share. Okay. Jurisdiction to okay, so certain categories, let's just do this here, of property related to violations of these laws are subject to criminal and civil forfeiture. They just take it. And sometimes they don't even give it back, even if you're acquitted. From what I understand, jurisdiction to seize. Let's just see. The government has established probable cause to believe that the target property, a 255-foot yacht, is owned by sanctioned Russian oligarch Viktor Vekselberg. So they sanction him personally and then go after assets which he indirectly or beneficially or partially owns through various interests in corporations that own those assets. Okay. The U.S. Treasury Department. Okay, we don't need this. I'm just going to go to my next highlight. Oh, this is jurisdiction to search. The government initially requested to search the documents, electronics, and other items located on the target property. Can't read it with that highlight. The court rejected this request as it does not have venue to issue a search warrant for property held at a foreign port under Rule 41 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, and no other statutory basis exists for such extraterritorial authority. However, the government may choose to bring copies of the contents of these items to a location where this court has venue, including within the District of Columbia. Appreciate what the judge is saying right now. We can't issue a search warrant there, because we don't have jurisdiction, but we're issuing the forfeiture. So once you got that, bring the documents here, knowing how I've just ruled on the forfeiture once you've read this decision, and a court here can have jurisdiction to search. And what do they look for there? To search documents, electronics, and items located in the target property. So this, what started off now, and I'm just thinking analytically, and I don't care who the subject of this is. Just thinking analytically, what starts off as a civil forfeiture of the asset, which is objectionable enough, is now turning into a searching and inspection of documents and the contents of that civilly forfeited property. Thanks for stating the obvious. Forfeitures are punitive, and thus the excessive fines clause of the 8th Amendment, we're going to have fun talking about this with Barnes. I mean, we've talked about it, but limits the government's forfeiture power. Okay. A forfeiture violates the excessive fines clause only, quote, if it is grossly disproportionate to the gravity of a defendant's offense. What is the defendant's alleged offense in this case? He's an oligarch that was sanctioned. Okay. However, any excessive fines challenges at this stage are premature, as 8th Amendment issues are not ripe until after a court enters a civil or criminal forfeiture order. Look, who am I to disagree with a judge, a federal court judge? And I'm not. I'm just, in my mind, it would seem that we might be putting the carriage in front of the horse. I don't know that this is true, because it seems bizarre. You cannot object to the civil forfeiture on the excessive fines challenge until it's been authorized and they've seized it. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's true, and if it is, that sounds like a nice loophole in the law for government abuse, but whatever. Even if an 8th Amendment challenge was ripe now, it utterly fails. So here's where he says, like, look, you can't challenge it. You can't challenge the excessive fines until we've seized it, until we've authorized the seizure and it has in fact been forfeited civilly or criminally. But even if you could argue that now, it utterly fails. And now that we're going to get into the question of judicial knowledge and just appreciate what the judge is taking as judicial notice here. Courts considering whether a forfeiture is, quote, grossly disproportional, end quote, under Judicial, consider several factors. And while circuits differ in precisely which factors they use, all consider the nature of the harm caused by the wrongdoer's conduct. Where are we going from here? In money laundering and bank fraud cases, the court must consider the harm to society in general. In money and bank laundering. Now, the question is this. Even if this is a money and bank laundering case, what does this have to do with Putin's invasion of Ukraine? In money laundering and bank fraud, yeah, okay, fine, yada, yada, yada. And then what did I highlight as the next one? Under page 5. Oh, yeah, here we go. Society suffers, quote, when criminally derived funds are laundered to allow the criminal unfettered, unashamed, and camouflaged access to the fruits of those ill-gotten gains. And the question is this: is this yacht the fruit of an ill-gotten gain of the alleged underlying crime of Putin invading Ukraine? or if it's just related to tax fraud, what do the sanctions have to do with this? I mean, I'm trying to piece it together in my mind. It's like it seems that they're conflating two separate, distinct issues. As sanctions protect national security, violations of the IEEPA require a broader consideration of the harm to U.S. national security interests. Indeed, quote, there is compelling governmental interest in maintaining national security and public safety, end quote, via IEEPA and the related sanctions regime. The harm to society here is acute. Which society? The laundered funds structured around the target property are part of a pattern of corruption used to circumvent U.S. sanctions. Let's operate on that. Let's dissect that now. This was set up. I mean, it depends when this was set up, actually. If this was set up before the first round of sanctions, which was 2018, or set up here 2022. Vekselberg is a Russian oligarch whom OFAC has sanctioned initially in response to Russia's annexation of Crimea and the threat posed to Ukraine's, quote, peace, stability, sovereign, and territorial integrity, Executive Order 2014. Further designated, OFAC further designated Vekselberg under new sanctions passed in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and part of Vekselberg having acted directly or indirectly on behalf of the Russian government. Okay. And then we get into the abstract. The harm of financial crimes like money laundering and bank fraud is often abstract and difficult to measure, such as impeding law enforcement, etc., or generally propping up other criminal activity. But the harm here is stark and quantifiable. The United Nations recorded this is where we're getting into, again, I don't know what evidence was adduced. United Nations recorded 1,232 civilian deaths and 1,953 injuries in Ukraine as of March 20, figures it believes to be extremely conservative. And then they get into what they think are the Russian casualties. While exact figures surrounding deaths of Ukrainian and Russian troops are difficult to obtain, estimates as high as 15,000 Russian troops killed in only 1 month foreshadow a death toll in the tens of thousands. And then we get to the conclusion, which we've already read. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of judicial knowledge that this judge is using to justify the sanctions, to justify the civil forfeiture of the yacht on the basis that Vekselberg has an indirect beneficial interest in it by virtue of the fact that he has interests in some of the corporations which themselves own this yacht. And that is a judge of the federal court issuing that judgment, and it's fascinating to read, and we'll see what happens. It's like people are going to construe this as being a defense of corrupt Russian oligarchs. No, if the guy broke the law, I mean, there's only so many places you can go with how many feet was that yacht? Make the evidence. I don't even know if that was ex parte that they got that court order. Anyhow, that's the judge. That's the court order. We'll see where it goes. I mean, one thing is certain. I presume Vekselberg has enough money for quality legal representation. So presume they're going to challenge that higher up. And we've seen what the FBI and Department of Justice has done in terms of, they're seizing the assets of a Russian oligarch here, but when they were seizing the security deposit boxes of American citizens, then people are like, well, this is abusive, this is tyrannical. But the second you get to say, well, it's a Russian oligarch, he must deserve it for one reason or the other, then people close their eyes until it comes to their security deposit box in the bank. Viva would want to go fishing with me because I fished for perch, rainbow smelt. Where Lisa M, fishing for me is something best done alone or with the kids. But even with the kids, gets very annoying with kids real fast. Nobody likes to fish quite as long as I do, and it's like it's the moment of quiet where you can be alone with your thoughts. But any excuse to go fishing is a good excuse to go fishing. Viva Frei, you rock. Fight peacefully. Fight without breaking the law, because you have to fight efficiently, lawfully, and in a manner that actually does not run contrary to your interests. Your Your vested interest. Now, people have figured out I'm being drawn to the all caps. Viva, shout out from Oregon. Good to see you here. Good to be here. That was the Russian oligarch seizure of the yacht decision, which, I mean, what the judge cites as fact. Because we've talked about this, but just so everybody appreciates, what makes its way into a court order, a judgment, is judicial fact. Parties allege, and the second a judge says, this is what I deem to be fact in the judgment, let me make sure I'm not going to be late for my lunch, then it becomes a judicial fact. It may be false. It may be absolutely wrong. It may be inaccurate. It may be accurate, regardless. It may be flat out wrong. It is nonetheless a judicial fact. And we got Mr. Obvious in the house. In his house, let's see where, or is it? Oh, Mr. Obvious is here. Alone with my thoughts. That sounds terrible. I love fishing. Fishing is awesome. To the extent you can eat the fish in the event that they get mortally hooked. Fishing in a place where I would not feel comfortable eating the fish. If they get mortally wounded, I feel bad then because I don't like mortally wounding anything and not eating it afterwards. Except mosquitoes. They deserve to burn in hell. Allegations. I don't believe this, Viva. I don't know what you mean by I don't believe this, but parties allege facts. They allege facts. Those are not judicial facts until a judge says, I've heard the parties. This is what I'm putting in my court order. And it can be outright wrong. It's nonetheless a judicial fact, and people have to learn to live with that. So what the judge does here, puts in as judicial fact, I mean, articles which have been officially debunked. I don't know in what capacity the judge was, or in what sense the judge was saying it's reminiscent of what the soldiers on Snake Island told the Ukrainians. And by the way, did they allege that, or did the judge just bring up Snake Island, for poetry? Viva Frei, I can confirm that this is true. I am honest because there is nothing worse than being thought of as a liar. It's bad when you are a liar, and it's even worse when you're not. And one of everyone knows it. My biggest fear as a lawyer was saying something incorrect to a judge, where the judge would attribute that incorrectness to dishonesty as opposed to just being wrong. So that's why it's you got to make sure that you are accurate in what you speak, and when you're not accurate, when you make a mistake, to correct yourself, because that is how you ensure that people have trust in you on a going forward basis. So that's the judgment. I mean, it reads like a pleading of the party, not of an order of the court. My mom used to say, I would rather have a thief than a liar. I think I get it. Unless the thief is also a liar. Thieves, by their nature, would have to tend to lie unless they admit to their thievery. Okay, tonight, by the way, before I forget, Pedro Gonzalez. Tomorrow, Chris Phillips, the young individual, the young man who asked Brian Stelter that tremendously embarrassing question. He's going to be on for a short while, and my brother, to talk about some of the developments in Canadian law stuffs. Trust is not important. It is the only thing. Trust, integrity, honesty, they're variations of the same. That's all that matters. If you cannot be trusted, it's the greatest curse on earth. All right, let's see what this says here. I want the same thing to happen to Gates and others. They have done far more damage to the world than someone just being a citizen who is rich. Well, I'm just wondering, okay, so I forget they impose sanctions on him because he's a Russian oligarch. He's a billionaire, and he's related politically and financially to Putin. Okay. Do we now? I mean, I'm trying to think of who else we've sanctioned, but. Okay, fine. So you sanction him. I would need to know the timeline on this, actually, as to when the corporate ownership of that yacht was structured in respect of the sanctions. See how old that yacht is. But then the sanctions on the individual, does it deprive them of doing any business? Because any business in which they have a shareholding, it'll just be an endless civil forfeiture of everything and anything in which the sanctioned individual has any direct or indirect interest. Maybe that's the purpose of it. or maybe it's just a question of, that's how you start. That's how you expand conflict to beyond anything useful. That's setting aside what I now firmly believe about sanctions. But if they're doing this to a Russian oligarch billionaire, no big deal. They'll never do it to us, right? They'll never do it to the individuals. Viva, did you see the bird poop on Biden in Iowa? I did not. Probably will not care. I was brought up thinking that a bird pooping on you is good luck. But in as much as the fly landing on the politicians while they're debating, I don't care about those things. I mean, I'm sure it's funny. But not, whatever. Viva, will you be covering the Rolling Thunder in Ottawa at the end of the month? Yes. Covering it as a participant, as a documentarian, I should say. Not as a participant, because we now live in a world in Canada where you don't know if you attend the wrong protest, seizure of bank accounts. Attend the wrong protest, donate to the wrong charity. Who did I talk to? Some things that are private, not for me, but people write me. People donated to the wrong federally incorporated not-for-profit, lived in fear that their lives would get destroyed because they thought they lived in a free country, supported a cause that they thought was a worthwhile cause to them. Viva, what's your take on direct democracy? Do you think we can establish one like Switzerland in Canada? There's no comment for now. My appreciation of that is that there's as many risks and perils of direct democracy as there are with any, as with any other system. There's no silver bullet and there's no right answer. There's just trade-offs, to quote Thomas Sowell. That's something else. Targeting people donating. WTF. They went after them hard, and I receive a lot of stuff that I can't verify, a lot of information, but frozen bank accounts, but not solely by virtue of a donation, by virtue of more active participation, as if that makes it any more justifiable. The extrajudicial freezing of bank accounts. Yeah. Oh, it's okay. Seize the criminal and civil forfeiture of a Russian oligarch's $90 million yacht. I don't care about. That's his problem. And, he probably did something bad to deserve it. Oh, but they'll never do it to citizens until they did it to 240 in Canada. Froze their bank accounts extrajudicially, no court order. This is Justin Trudeau, while promising to immunize the banks who so froze bank accounts of individuals because they parked their car on Wellington or because they had an active role in the protest or the organization. Yep. There is no other word for it other than disgusting. And I just got the notification that Eric Hunley is live at noon. So you might want to check out Eric Hunley at noon when I go offline to go have lunch with someone, a lawyer, a friend of mine. I just came to my phone to see what we have going on the Rumbles. Any super rants, Rumble rants, whatever? No, but let's see if we have any. Nothing that I can read. That was the exact moment I realized Canada has fallen. Our dominion is doomed. I got reports of, people withdrawing lots and lots of cash from bank accounts, which some hypothesize was the reason for which Trudeau rescinded his executive orders, because the banks were calling up Trudeau saying, we don't have this much cash on reserve. What the hell are you doing? But yeah, don't imagine that. We forgot about it right now. And now the government, to distract Canadians from national issues that affect their very freedom, their very constitutional charter rights of association, to distract them from that, whip them up into getting involved in a foreign conflict and pit them the one against the other on that issue now, to avoid them discussing how Justin Trudeau shredded the very fabric of a free and democratic Canada. He turned Canada, through one abusive Emergencies Act declaration, into a North Korean-style dictatorship. It's much more polite. I call it the polite dictatorship. With one utterance of the mouth, he destroyed the fabric of Canada, if not irreparably, at the very least, for a very, very long time. But he's so polite when he does it. And now what's he done? He's whipped up Canada into a frenzy distracted our energies, our finances, our spiritual cohesion as a nation to getting involved in foreign conflict. But only a very select foreign conflict. He's only interested in Ukraine, Russia invasion. He's not interested in Sudan. He's not interested in the Middle East until it becomes politically convenient to do so. Right now, he's got one target: to whip up the frenzy, sow discord, pit Canadians against Canadians, nationalize a foreign conflict, and hey, it's good for politics. And you got that. Speaking of WF, you got your Jagmeet Singh unifying with Justin Trudeau to make sure that corrupt, unethical government is propped up until 2025. But guys, yeah, you really should. Don't look over there. Yeah, no, I don't think I would. I don't think I want it. Lisa M says, "Viva Frei for Prime Minister of Canada." I look. They all end up looking like their soul gets sucked out of their every orifice of their body. Justin Trudeau, and I said he looks terrible, but not to make fun of the way he looks. He looks like evil has. If I'm projecting or personifying, if I'm infusing spirituality in this, he looks like he has been overtaken by evil. Although maybe I'm just projecting my own dislike for Justin Trudeau and his policies onto the individual. Cassidy the Carpenter, Canada has literally provided more money than any other country has to Ukraine. Every week, it's another $100 million loan. Man, if only that much effort was given towards mental health and homelessness. Oh, no. Mental health and homelessness, mental health issues that our government has exacerbated through their absolutely useless, equally corrupt and incompetent response to COVID. They've created another problem that they get to pretend to be the solution to, while Indigenous still have water boiling advisories entering Justin Trudeau's 7th year as Prime Minister. 6 or 7. Our Indigenous population still has to boil water on reserves to have clean drinking water. I've single-handedly and personally witnessed the homelessness, which seems to be it's very specific in demographics, just depending on the area. A lot of Indigenous homelessness in downtown Montreal. Mental health issues that they've exacerbated, if not outright caused. Now they get to pretend, oh God, we need to go dump more of your tax dollars that we've squandered on our corrupt and incompetent response to COVID onto the psychological and incidental results from that. Now we got to go. We'll help you. Here's an app. Here's the app, the mental wellness app from your government. Oh my God. Okay. Let me see here. Scott Campbell says, because of JT's seizing, freezing Canadian bank accounts, my wife and I have withdrawn all but $7,000 from all our accounts. We're not taking the chance with the leftists in charge here in the USA. Yeah, if you have another place to put it, the only problem, Biden administration, and I won't blame Biden. American government might not be much better. They're seizing stuff also, but at the very least, there's more blowback there. I think maybe because there's more people who there's more people on both sides of the political spectrum there. Whereas here, as far as I'm concerned, conservative, liberal, NDP, they are all birds of the same feather. And so they all say, so long as you keep your punishment to those rowdy truckers, we don't care. In the States, there's more rowdy truckers on one side that are not, that are vocal about it and have political representation to fight against it. Rebel News denied media license by government-appointed advisory panel. Who the thunk? Rita Howell. This is I presume it's the same government-appointed agency that denied them certification. No, it's not the same, but another federal entity denied them press credentials to cover the federal elections debate. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. I'm not even sure that they want it. I'm sure they want it in principle, or they want to get rejected to prove a point. I'm not sure that they want it. I'm not sure that they need it. They don't need it until Bill C-11 passes. And then, the government's going to clamp down on misinformation. Do I need to pull up that BBC article again? Speaking of misinformation, probably could have put a same montage together with CBC or Radio-Canada. Vicky Hennian says, what is the next thing that they put on a show for, or that they put a show on for? Energy will probably be the next really big push. they'll be able to justify lockdowns again. No, they've already said this. For anybody who's not paying attention, the measures we've learned, or the lessons we've learned from the COVID, we're going to apply to the environment crisis. Just keep fabricating crises, and you create work for yourself as a government. Yeah, and we'll wait until they find out that electric cars are not so green. I'm not going to go into that rant again, but just wait until they find out that electric cars are not so green. Wait until people find out that charging your vehicle for $2 an hour, when it goes to $6 an hour or $10 an hour or more than that, it's not going to be much different than $2 a liter gas, or in the States, $5 a gallon gas. Nor is it going to be that much more environmentally friendly, if at all, to get those lithium batteries and to charge those lithium batteries. Yep. I don't know that they're horrible. I'm not convinced, nature lover, that they are the silver bullet to environmental waste by any means. They know, and one day they're going to say, "Oh my goodness, we got to now tax you for disposal of your solar panels. We've got to tax you to dispose of the battery in your EV car. Those things don't recycle themselves. That $7,000 credit we gave you to get the EV, yeah, we're going to need to tax you on the disposal of your battery because it's polluting." Cassidy the Carpenter: "I'd like to thank every individual who voted NDP as a protest vote to Trudeau. They ensured Liberals will double down on cronyism for the next 3 years." Cassidy, I don't know. That was my line when I was running for office. You think it's a protest vote? You're voting for an individual and a party that is equally corrupt, equally unethical. They just haven't had their time in power to allow that to materialize into reality. Okay, so those are the subjects for today. Let me see. There was something else on my Twitter feed. I got back to my Twitter feed as a running diary of my thoughts. Responsible. Yeah, this I love this. Let me just see what else I had up here. Oh God, that fish was so beautiful. CBC. There was an interesting article. This was in response to a tweet by Nate Brody. This is no shade on Nate. I like Nate. Nate is my friend, a genuine friend. We met back in the day. Okay, I got 3 Fauci juices all over me. I caught both the flu and COVID. Riddle me this, Batman. And that was riddle me this, Batman. I don't know how Jim Carrey said it in that scene. And then I just, found there was an article a little while ago, because we can learn a lot from Israel in some senses. But I make no comment, no medical, no legal, no election fortification advice. I make no comment. I just point out the comments that others have made. European Union regulators warn that frequent boosting could adversely affect the immune response and may not be feasible. Yes, now true, in that article, just so it's, I clipped the article so people can read it. Are we looking at the same thing here? I think we are. Ugh, I don't like accepting cookies from garbage. No, we're not. Hold on, I'm going to go to this, back here, and now we should be seeing the article. Let me see here. Are we seeing the article? By the way, I'm going to end this on a rant as well. I watched a movie that how much time do I get to watch a movie that's not an animated movie? Not much. And it was the worst movie I've ever seen. It was insultingly bad. And surprisingly, Seth Rogen was in it. Okay, frequent boosters. This is from Bloomberg, people. Frequent boosters spur warning on immune response. European Union regulators warn that frequent COVID-19 booster shots could adversely affect the immune response and may not be feasible. Repeat booster doses every 4 months could eventually weaken the immune response and tire out people. I love these euphemisms. According to the European Medicines Agency, instead, countries should leave more time between booster programs and tie them to the onset of the cold season in each hemisphere, following the blueprint set out by the influenza vaccine strategies. So one thing, just, that's it. So too much, bad. Aristotle's golden mean. Too much, bad. The golden mean, not too much, not too little. The problem is, what happens when you have too much of the golden mean? Do you not, in order to satisfy the golden mean, periodically you do not need excess in one way or the other, so that you are not always, without exception, within the golden mean, which would violate the rule of the golden mean. Philosophical conundrum, jokes aside. The advice comes as some countries consider the possibility of offering people second booster shots in a bid to provide further protection amid surging Omicron infections. This was from January 11, which is why we're January 11, 2022. So it's a couple months old. The UK said that boosters are providing good levels of protection and there is no need for a second booster shot at the moment, but we'll review the data. And then you heard what the CEO of Pfizer said himself, but I posted that a while back. Boosters, quote, can be done once or maybe twice, but it's not something that we can think should be repeated constantly. Marco Cavalleri, the EMA head of biological health threats and vaccine strategy, said at a press conference on Tuesday, we need to think about how we can transition from the current pandemic setting into a more endemic setting. Okay. So yeah, setting all that aside, that was one of the I'm going to talk about not that, but where we're at in Canada in terms of recommendations. This is all from a legal perspective, people. Tomorrow with my brother, and we're going to talk about, that Chris Phillips, and his question to Brian Stelter, because there's more to the kid. It's not, and I'm saying the kid in a amicable way, not in a demeaning way. He's a young man. There's more to the young man than a mere "I didn't do it" line, and we're going to flesh it out. Okay, well, Cassidy the Carpet said, oh man, I've come full circle. Only reason I wouldn't go EV is because of the reliance on receiving charges. Gas combustion engine equals freedom. Well, you got the hybrids, which I was in a taxi that was hybrid, and it was so quiet when we idled at a red light. It was amazing. You know what? Okay, I only have a few minutes left. Let's talk about the movie. It was called Bad Neighbors, depending on where it was released, or Neighbors. And the problem with the movie, it was so bad and so insultingly disgusting. And I have a raunchy sense of humor. I have no problem with the raunchiest comedy. I watched Road Trip the other day. Again, that movie has aged better than American Pie. That movie's still funny. Neighbors. I need to get the name of the actress, because she reminds me a lot of my wife in terms of the way she looks. Or her physical appearance, I mean. What's her name? Someone in the chat's going to get it before I can get it. Written by, produced by, starring Rose Byrne. If I may flatter my wife, I believe Rose Byrne looks like my wife. Hold on one second. Let's just see. Anybody who's Rose Byrne is. This is what I think Rose Byrne looks like my wife. So I like her. I loved her in Get Him to the Greek. This movie was so bad, it makes me dislike everyone that was in the movie. I mean, I don't know Zac Efron, but I don't like him now. I don't know the other guy there with the smile, but I don't like him now. The movie was so bad about a married couple with a newborn who end up living next to a house of frat boys. She's beautiful. She is objectively beautiful. And they end up living, the house next to them gets bought by a frat house. It's just disgusting, awful, unfunny humor that's insulting, and I wasted my one night watching that movie. I saw Inception as well, which was not as good as I thought it was going to be, but there was some elements to it that were worthwhile. Special effects were magnificent. Okay, so that's it. Unless there's some questions in the chat. No, she's British, and she's, in as much as superficiality means anything, she's superficially beautiful. I don't know if she's spiritually beautiful, but Seth Rogen, my God, and what was once funny of his signature comedy is now tired, offensive, and I feel like I watch these movies. I feel like they're trying to condition us to tolerate debauchery, like to talk and normalize outright debauchery, neglect, Okay, the first scene in the movie where I already wanted to turn it off. After getting nervous about the frat house moving in next to them, and they tell them, keep it down. The husband and wife then go party with the frat house all night long, and I think they left their kid unattended next door, and the kid's a newborn or like a year. I was like, this already makes me nauseous. It's like normalizing debauchery, normalizing neglect, and humorizing it so that people think, okay, well, at least I'm not that bad. So therefore, I must be acceptable enough. I'm not going to read this, but thank you for the super chat. What is that in your avatar? Your avatar, if I'm guessing. Oh God, I just bent my glasses. Nope. Can't even see it without my glasses on, but thank you very much for the chat. I just read an interesting. That's what it is, bro. Programming. It's no, like, but I'm not like good-natured humor or even bad-natured raunch humor. Road Trip is still funny. Road Trip is legal in its humor. I watched American Pie and I was like, I don't know if it's the lawyer in me, if it's the adult, if I'm turning into a cranky old man. What they were doing in that movie, like, it's always been a crime to like distribute the videos that, you know, they thought were pranks in that movie. They're in high school. That's actual unlawful behavior and bad natured. Road Trip was funny. I love Stifler. I love there. I said it. Okay. What else was there? There was the Hunter. Well, we're going to talk more with Robert tonight. Robert Pedro Gonzalez, which I have to create the link before tonight. Let's see what we got in the chat. Let's see what we got here. Hold on. Stop watching Hollywood. Start watching Korean TV. Forget Squid Games. Watch Mr. Sunshine Beautiful. Will do. And Koreans, they've made some. What was the movie? Old Boy. Great movie. Was it Old Boy or Old School? Korean movies are amazing. Japanese movies are amazing. French movies, I haven't watched enough in a long time, but they used to have some. They used to have some great movies as far as I go. Winston have. The dogs were quite happy to see me. Do it, nibble it. He's not nibbling it, but he does say, hello, everybody. My name is Winston. This was a great live stream. He smells a little wet carpety. I have to fix that. Viva Frei, feed the plants. Why are we trying to starve the plants from the CO2? Oh, okay. Viva, could you post a comprehensive list of? I think I put out a vlog that covered the biggest ones. Yeah, I certainly did. I put out one about the Lancet article, which confirmed the big one. I'm sure I'll maybe make a playlist. Although I did have the Rona playlist, which yeah. Viva Frei, Rose is Australian like Margot Robbie, and everyone else attractive and interesting in movies. Rose is Australian like Margot Robbie, and everyone else attractive and interesting in movies these days. Okay, it's funny because her accent was Australian in the movie, but I only heard her first accent as British. Oh, okay. I don't know who Margot Robbie is, but I'll have to go. I think I do know who Margot Robbie is. Road Trip is funny, classic. We missed you. Yes, I know, and I missed everyone yesterday. And I was gonna try to do it, but I would not have had my head in it, and it would have been too stressful. I wanted to do like a standalone breakdown of that article from Quebec talking about withdrawing the fines. Withdrawing the fines, not enough. Yeah, we talked about that. Depends on the but they're in high school. They were Oh, you're right. They are graduating year. It's very close legally. Morally, I think it's not close. But the funny thing is, I watched that. I found that movie hilarious 20 years ago. Not so much now. Dumb and Dumber, still a classic. Billy Madison, still a classic. Happy Gilmore, the classic of classics. What other good comedies? Well, there's some Royal Tenenbaum is still beautiful. Rushmore, fantastic. I'm going to have to watch Mr. Sunshine. Little Miss Sunshine, great movie. Still have trouble now. I still have trouble viewing anything coming out of Hollywood that has children in it now. But Viva, having Winston talk in a cartoon voice. Yep, watching too many animated movies. And I picked who's to say he doesn't have I'm Winston. It's because he's got that little barrel, little chest, which makes for a little wheezy voice. Love the comment. Is she spiritually beautiful? Hey, I've met plenty of beautiful people who are ugly inside, and I think, and the funny thing is this. I think I've said people think it's a little bizarre. The olfactory sense is the most important sense, the sense of smell. And I genuinely believe that people who are spiritually ugly exude a physical bad odor, or something about it, something about their spiritual ugliness affects my olfactory appreciation of them, and the two go hand in hand. So back to school, I did not find all that funny. And the other one there, Madhouse, no. Oh, geez, with John Belushi. Not John, yeah, with John Belushi. The Frat House movie. What's the Frat House movie, people? Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Animal House. Damn it, why'd you tell me? Animal House, that's bordering on what was only acceptable back then that could never be acceptable now. Still funny, though. I mean, John Belushi's character in that movie, absolute timeless classic. It will never get old, and the gags in that movie will never get old either, but definitely not something you can watch with a young kid. Spaceballs, classic. I learned the hard way. That is also a movie you shouldn't necessarily watch with a 5-year-old who doesn't appreciate what keep firing buttholes means. Okay, people, that's it. Let's do this. Thank you. It's good to see you all again. As I mentioned Saturday morning, we're going to mix it up. It's going to be a vlog sometimes. It's going to be a stream whenever. If the format troubles you, well, it'll trouble you until you get used to it. We will get used to everything. I will post the clips on Viva Clips, as I will do with the live stream clips. I didn't post many clips from Sunday stream because the audio was so bad it bothered me, but I'll see if I can find some salvageable clips for convenience. Tonight, Caddyshack I did not find funny. The most recent time I saw it. Weekend at Bernie's I have to watch again. What About Bob is underrated, and I remember thinking that the last time. Baby steps, baby steps. My Super Troopers, I'm gonna have to go. Ooh, dare I say that? Airplane is a classic. Thank you, Viva. Rockstar Murray, thank you. Okay, I'm going to enjoy my lunch. I didn't eat breakfast because that's how neurotic. Oh, I had a few bites of an egg. Anyhow, it's going to be a good lunch. I will see you in T-minus 7 hours. 7 o'clock tonight. And tomorrow, I think it's probably going to be a 3:15-ish start time. So we can go live at 3:15, get Chris Phillips in by 3:30. Conversation lasts as long as it lasts. And then I bring my brother in and we talk about other stuff. So Pineapple Express, I did not find funny. Where did I just see that? Blazing Saddles is a classic, but it's almost a movie that you can get canceled for saying that you like these days. The Burbs. Okay, Pineapple Express, I did not find funny. I'm going to have to watch Superbad again, and I think I'm not going to like it now. 40-Year-Old Virgin, okay, whatever. Anyway, that's not turning into... Porky's is a classic. Maybe not the funniest movie in the world, but quite funny. All right, well, I'll see you guys in 7 hours. I'm going to go create that link right now. And that's it. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the support. Clip away, post to social media. And we will have another fun discussion tomorrow and another fun one Friday and another fun one Saturday, Sunday night with Barnes. Going to be awesome. People, take care of yourselves. See you this evening. Peace.